Hey everyone, and welcome back to Put the Guidebook Down, the cultural travel podcast for people who want to see the world with more intention, more curiosity, and definitely more cultural awareness. Today, we're diving into a topic that is long overdue, the power of taking a gap year or stepping off the expected linear pathway to explore the world beyond the expected. Today we have a very special guest, my good friend Hari, who I'm very jealous had a lot of experience with the gap year. He is a former Boren Scholar and Gilman Research Scholar at the University of Alabama. He is a dual degree undergraduate studying data science and foreign languages and literature. With study and work experiences at universities, nonprofits, and research institutions across the United States, Indonesia, and Germany, he is training for a career in sustainable development. So today we're going to unpack what that kind of intentional time abroad really does to your life path, your identity, and the way you see yourself moving through the world. Hari, welcome.
Hi, Kira. Thank you so much for having me on this podcast. I'm really glad to be here.
Yeah, I'm super excited. I'm super jealous because I didn't have the opportunity to do as much study abroad gap year opportunities as you have. So I want to jump right into it by getting down to what inspired you to step away from the traditional university career path and to take advantage of a gap year or study abroad program.
Yeah, for me, I would say that it was because one of my academic interests was in computational linguistics. So I was really interested in like how computer science and linguistics can work together. And obviously, as you know, like getting immersion or getting like near fluency or just professional proficiency in a language is really hard at like the university level.
Yeah.
So I felt like for me, immersion and kind of getting out was really important, and I wasn't going to get that at the University of Alabama.
Hmm.
And yeah, so that definitely fit my academic interests, and also I just really wanted to like live outside of the United States for once
Yeah.
and learn more about new cultures and different value orientations and things like that.
Yeah, of course. And like try something new, of course. And who doesn't like an opportunity to go abroad,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Especially when it's funded, right?
Exactly. Free trip. I mean,
Yeah.
free. But so then how did people around you react? Like family, friends, were they supportive, confused, maybe skeptical, or what was the vibe like when you told them that you're going to go off on this non-traditional pathway?
Yeah, that's a really good question, especially because I would say it was kind of a mixed bag. On
Mm,
one hand, my university like really like I got Indonesia through the prestigious foreign scholarships. So obviously my university was like making a lot of promotional material out of this and the other winners, of course.
hmm
So it was like hard for people to not be supportive, but at the same time, people were, especially my peers, were kind of confused because the traditional like computer science or data science or like this text student doesn't really do gap year. Most usually the philosophy in this in like the tech field is like graduate within 4 years, always focus on internships and just get a really good job right out of college. I would say like for some of my peers in research and in my classes, they were really confused as to why I wanted to do this. And it was frustrating having to explain like how this fits into my career goals. If I explained it to people, I think usually they would understand. But definitely it was a mixed bag, like support and confusion.
Yeah. I think it goes back into just taking the unexpected route and just trying something
Yeah,
different. I know this is something that I relate to. I mean, we met through Boren and being
right.
the same Indonesia program, which is super cool. But all of my friends, colleagues were like, what are you doing? Like,
Yeah,
like
exactly.
like you went from, for example, like just my degrees in linguistics and then marketing, they're like, what are you doing? And then to go to Moldova for Fulbright and then to go to Indonesia, they're like, really, what is this girl up to? But
Yeah,
it's about how you spin it, right? Because we'll get later into this on how this has shaped your career pathway and outlook, but it's all about how you spin it, right?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of people don't. I guess a lot of people don't see it as professional experience, even though it really is.
Yeah, at the
For a
core.
lot of different reasons.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. So then taking a step back, once you started going on this whole adventure of the unexpected. What expectations did you have versus what the experience actually turned into? And we'll talk about like on a high level before getting into program specific.
Yeah, I feel like I expected it to feel fully academic and professional, but and obviously it was very academic and professional because you know how intensive our program was, and we'll probably talk about that later.
Yeah.
But I didn't expect that much like personal growth in terms of like the different experiences I would have in like a different university system or host family, and like doing all these cultural excursions, or like personal growth in terms of making new friends and like having to start like a social or professional network from ground zero multiple times, you know? So it felt very personally challenging, I
Mhm.
guess. And I was really expecting more of those academic, like standard academic challenges.
Yeah. Yeah, and I know that's something that I've talked about in my other episodes is really about how these types of travel experiences shape you beyond what is maybe just defined in the program description or the itinerary, because you get all of these skills for character development, for
Yeah.
professional development that influences all these other aspects of your life, maybe internally without you realizing and externally in how you perform.
Yeah, totally. I agree.
But going now a little bit more into that academic travel expectations and a little bit more into the tourism expectations versus reality with these types of programs, what felt different about living somewhere as a scholar versus visiting somewhere as a tourist in some of your previous travels?
Yeah, so in my experience, when you're living somewhere as a scholar, it felt like I was in a state of constant learning where basically, yeah, basically if you're living in a new country and in a new culture, if you're living somewhere in a new country or a new culture, I feel that you could learn something literally every single day about the language or the culture or the history. Whereas and I've been a tourist as well, and even though I try to integrate educational experiences with my tourism, I don't get that same depth that I would get as a scholar.
Mm.
And when I'm a scholar, I'm really immersed into like the academic and professional and social contexts of like what does it really mean to be like Indonesian or German.
Hmm.
And those are just because of that level of really, yeah, very high level of immersion, I feel like I was just constantly learning. And that's something I wouldn't get as a tourist.
Hmm. So because you had to get more of that day-to-day feeling and
Yeah, exactly.
viewpoint, okay.
Yeah, because I was like, to be honest, in many ways, I feel like I was just a normal guy living there. Like I would
I
go
like
to class, I would go to work, I would like go to the cafe with friends after work.
that.
Um,
I know we went to a
yeah,
cafe quite a few times together to study.
yeah. I remember at the beginning you said you wanted to go to a new cafe every single day.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah,
I still have my cafe map, Hari.
really? On Google Maps?
I still do, and I continued the tradition even in New York City now.
That's really cool, actually. Yeah, because
Yeah.
I know Malang had like you probably know more, but I know Malang had like more than
So many.
300 cafes,
So
and I
many.
can't imagine New York City.
It's like the underground cafe culture of Indonesia that we just
Yeah,
don't really talk about, but exists. And that's just where everyone, not just students, do their work, but just how everyone hangs out, which I love, honestly. I wish we
yeah,
did
I
that
love it
more
too.
in the States.
Yeah, I really like that culture too. One of my Indonesian friends told me that students prefer to study in cafes because the I guess the library system is not as good as we have it in the United States.
Mm.
Yeah, which I thought was really interesting.
Huh. Yeah, because I do feel like most students always gravitate towards the library versus,
Yeah, at least at my university, for sure.
yeah, well, same in mine too. It's
Yeah.
always very difficult to find a seat to study.
Yeah.
But yeah, okay. So then going a little bit more into Bourne without going into too much detail, because we will cover that in a different episode. But
Okay.
talking about the Bourne scholarship structure and your experience, how was this different from traditional study abroad programs, or maybe even in comparison to your Gilman Research Scholarship?
First, first I'll compare Boren to traditional programs. And I feel like for traditional programs, this is just based on what I've heard from my friends who have also studied abroad with more traditional programs. I feel that at least the Boren Flagship program that we did together was more intensive in terms of like the number of class hours we did every day. And like stuff we did outside of class was like cultural like excursions or music classes and language partner sessions and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because when I've spoken with my other friends who have studied abroad in like more traditional programs, I I had the impression that they either did like the same, their like class schedule was like as intensive as it was in the States, or even less intensive. So then they could like focus more on tourism and making new friends and things like that.
Mhm.
Whereas ours was different. Our Boren flagship was different because it had more emphasis on like immersion and getting like as much language proficiency as
Mhm.
we could. But also that was only the flagship. So that was the summer and the fall program. But Boren also lets you design your own program. And I would say that's really different from traditional study abroad programs because most other study abroad program providers only let you like join a pre-designed program and like take classes from a list or like a pre-designed list, whereas Boren lets you design your own program, which is really cool. And um for me that led to working at an environmental nonprofit in Kalimantan. But for other people, could be um like yoga classes in Bali or like really intensive language study in Java. And I really like that Boren lets you design your own program and do something that really fits more of your interests compared to just doing a traditional study abroad program and finding your own thing.
Yeah. It's definitely more immersive in that way because you
Yeah,
have more free will to choose your own pathway and go more into the day to day than just keeping into that structured class to class environment.
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't remember if you remember, but when we were in Malang, I feel like our academic program insulated us a little bit from the rest of the world, at least in terms of language, because we would speak very, very formally. And then if we were to speak with like a normal person, they would think we're speaking like too formal. And it was just very funny.
Yeah, yeah, I definitely remember that. And it's still, I don't want to say a problem. It's still something that I deal with now since I only did the program up until the end of the fall. And,
Right.
when I'm still texting my host family or my friends over there, they're
Yeah.
like, what are you saying this for? I'm like, guys, I'm being formal and respectful to you. But then also on the rare occasions they send me the famous Indonesian text lingo. And I don't know how to translate it.
Yeah.
Because then, like, all these letters are together that just don't make sense.
Yeah. That's really funny. I've had Yeah, definitely. I've had similar experiences. Like, I was really not prepared for like texting with, I guess, normal texting with Indonesians
Yeah.
after I left that program and moved to Kalimantan.
Yeah, I'm sure you had a completely different experience with just jumping into what's actually said on a day to day rather than speaking. So, like, you're
Yeah.
giving a public speaking opportunity.
Yeah. It's like the memes where like if people were speaking as if it was a LinkedIn post.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
They're so funny. Or that or like old Shakespearean English. Okay. But going backwards, was there a moment when you realized I'm not just a visitor anymore then? Because we're talking about this a little bit in terms of Indonesia, but in general, when's a time in
Yeah.
any of your programs where you were just going about and you pause and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm not just a tourist?
Yeah, at least for I can probably answer that for Indonesia and Germany separately. So
Mm,
for Indonesia, I felt like I didn't have a singular moment, but rather just reminders throughout the whole semester or like the whole year I was in Indonesia.
mhm,
Because for Indonesia, it felt like I integrated very quickly, probably because of how our program was structured.
mhm.
But yeah, I feel like I didn't have specific um, like a singular moment, just reminders throughout
Mm.
my year. So like I would say like one of my favorite moments was in when I lived in Kalimantan, or actually when I moved to Kalimantan. I actually was invited to multiple of my coworkers' homes just to eat and
Oh.
chat before I even had my first like day of work for my internship. So
Hmm.
it was like my first time meeting these people was in their homes and not in the office, which I thought was really cool. And I felt very integrated from the beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah, so and then that kind of behavior just continued throughout my time wherever I lived in Indonesia. And for Germany, I would say it felt less the case,
Mhm.
possibly. And that was probably because there's not as much of the collectivist culture in Germany compared to as in Indonesia. And also because I was there for a shorter time,
Mhm.
because I was only in Germany for about 10 weeks for my research internship. Whereas in Indonesia, I was in two places, each for about 4 months.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Right.
but even in Germany, I had a very good experience, like getting integrated with like some of the research things. So like um I would like go to the brown bag sessions, which are basically presentations or like poster presentations, and a bunch of these other things that let me get to know other people's research and get to know my colleagues and stuff like that. Yeah.
I think you bring a good point in terms of the time differences. At least for me and building culture travel, this has been kind of a big point is how do we do slow travel to facilitate that cultural immersion and deep integration, as you said, with even like building connections with local to the point where you're invited to their homes in a
Right.
shorter
Yeah.
period of time. So is there a way for us to go that deep without being there for months at a time? What are your
Yeah.
thoughts?
That's a really good question. And I wish I had a good answer. I feel like it has to be possible. But
Yeah.
yeah, I don't have that solution right now. Maybe you're part of the solution. Who knows?
Oh, that's so nice. We hope so. But
Yeah,
I
but
think language,
yeah,
as
yeah, go
you
ahead.
mentioned, is a big component of it.
Yeah, yeah, you bring up a really good point. I feel like there should be a way to, or I wish there were a way to like integrate the community in a shorter amount of time.
Yeah,
And that way you can like get to know a place and its community better.
yeah. We'll
Yeah,
see. We're building it with culture and travel.
yeah,
Positive manifestation.
yeah. I'm excited to see what you guys make.
Thank you. Thank
Yeah,
you. Now, talking about Indonesia versus going to Germany versus going back to the States versus I know you went to India. This is a lot of back and forth and switching between different countries, culture, languages.
yeah,
Let's get into the whiplash, okay? Because I know I've experienced it personally, just going between US, Moldova, and Indonesia back and forth and going from reverse culture shock as well. What was the transition like for you between all of these different cultures and countries?
like, I could generally speak about this for a long time, but for the, I guess I could talk about the linguistic side first. So like
Okay,
in
my favorite.
April, yeah, just because like switching languages all the time.
Yeah.
In April, like April to May was like a really busy month for me because I went from, like you mentioned, I was in Indonesia and I went to India, back to the States for some time to visit family. And then I went to Germany for my internship. So within that 1 month, I went from like speaking Indonesian on a daily basis to Telugu, which is my parents' language,
Hmm.
then to English in the States, and then to German in Germany. So by the time I got to Germany, and also keep in mind I hadn't spoken or like practiced my German for about a year. So by
Yeah.
the time I got there, my head was like very confused with like all the languages I had spoken
That's
in
a
the
mess.
past years, the last month.
Yes.
Uh, yeah, and because of that, it took me a while to like get back, get proficient in my German again. Because yeah, like I said, everything was just so mixed up after that 1 month. Yeah,
That happens. I know I still feel kind of mixed up in all my languages.
right.
People
Because
always
you've
ask,
lived in so many places.
but I mean, it's just in general, I feel like people always ask when people speak multiple languages, how do you keep them separate? I feel like you've done a pretty good job about that. Whereas I go from like Indonesian into Russian into Romanian in one sentence. Like I was even doing it today. I forgot how to
Yeah,
say chicken in Indonesian. And I went from like Russian to French to Romanian. Then I had to
yeah,
go to Google Translate to check it in Indonesian.
right. I know
And I was like,
exactly what you mean. Like, do you mean like you know those moments where you know the word for something in like every language except English? which is like your native language.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah,
It's so funny how the brain works like that and assigns certain emotions, situations, scenarios to words, even if it's not
yeah,
your native tongue that's recalled first. Ugh, love.
yeah. I know exactly what you mean.
So then talking about this kind of mesh that's going on and maybe how we recall languages, did you ever feel that you had different versions of yourself that you were developing simultaneously?
Um, I think I would say that I had like an international version of myself and like an American version
Okay.
because and you didn't this might be a little hard for you to believe because you got to know me mostly through the international version of me. But before my Boren scholarship and before the study abroad, I was much more introverted. And when
Great.
I like realized I had to study abroad and like start from ground zero for like social networks and stuff like that, I pushed myself to be more extroverted. And this was especially true in Kalimantan, where I didn't like just join or jump into a program. But
Yeah.
when I lived in Kalimantan, I had to like I went to like a lot of random events like the city book club or like random lectures at my host university just to that's just to feel integrated with the community and get to know people and make friends and things like that. Whereas I was probably not that brave or like motivated or ready to be that extroverted before when I lived in the United States. So that was like two very separate versions of me. And I actually thought I would just like revert back to my old self when I came back to the States, but that was not true. My friends have told me I'm much more talkative or extroverted now.
Interesting. Because, yeah, I only knew you really as extroverted, in my opinion. Now
Yeah,
you're introverted. So that was always shocking to hear. But this existing now kind of as a blend or hybrid of these new
yeah,
personality traits is kind of going back to my episode about existing in the middle, which I know we've talked
yeah, totally.
about navigating everything.
Yeah. I also find it very funny, if I'm being honest, I found it very funny that you only know the extroverted version of me.
Because I'm like, you say you were introvert. I'm like, I don't see it, Hari. Like, I simply just
Yeah.
don't see it.
Yeah.
Would have never thought. But talking about introverted Hari not being super introverted after coming back, how was your experience returning to traditional student life in the United States?
Yeah. So I would say that I was I was for the most part prepared. I will say in my whole year abroad, I kind of forgot I guess how hard I used to work or how hard university courses were. So I actually like, and it's kind of silly now to say that, but since I underestimated how hard my college courses would be, I like signed up for 24 credit hours, which is,
Oh my gosh.
yeah. And this could be different for like every university.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know who our like listener base is, but basically 24 credits is a lot in one
It's a
semester.
lot. Yeah,
Um,
like insane. I don't even know how you
yeah,
got approval for that.
and
My university would never.
my university is interesting. I don't really know why they approve it either, but you're allowed to take more than 18 credit hours in one semester. But yeah, things like that. I guess that's like the biggest proof that I wasn't really ready, I guess, or I kind of forgot what lectures and things like that were like.
Hmm.
And I also, this is something I've spoken to my friends a lot about, but when we were, like, for example, when we were studying together
Hmm.
in Malang and also for me in Kalimantan and in Germany, when we did our language courses, it was like super interactive. And we basically got to speak with our professors or our classmates like all the time.
Yeah.
And I was not prepared to come back to a traditional lecture. Yeah, to a traditional lecture where we basically just, it feels like here we just go to the lecture and we listen for about an hour and then leave. And I kind of miss the interactive side of things that you only get in a language classroom.
Yeah. There's something to say
Yeah,
about that. Language classrooms do tend to be more interactive than other
yeah,
subject areas.
exactly. Yeah. And it's easier to make friends because of that. And
True.
yeah, it's just more memorable.
That is very true.
Yeah, which is why more people should take a language class at university.
Yeah, that or consider studying abroad, which is a great transition into getting close to our end of the episode in terms of what advice you would give to students who are hesitant to take a gap year or apply to these types of programs or study abroad.
Yeah, I would say the biggest thing is like the biggest, I would say the biggest thing is don't let the imposter syndrome get to you.
Mhm.
So I know quite a few people who have looked at opportunities like the Boren Scholarship and just self-selected out or chosen not to apply. But the reality is if if you're interested in these kinds of opportunities and you're willing to put the work in, you deserve to be in the room and you definitely deserve to apply. So that's the biggest thing. And um, also, if you're listening to this podcast, I assume you're a university student, and just remember you have a ton of resources because most American universities will have a like a study or education abroad department, or at least an education abroad alumni association. So you have people you could go to if you need advice or something like that.
Yeah, for sure. Take
Yeah,
advantage of those free help that's on campus.
yeah,
Right
exactly.
there. Use them.
Yeah. Yeah, like hundreds, or at some schools, like hundreds of advisors are there
Yeah.
to help you out.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
awesome. Well, any final words that you would like to add before we close out this episode?
Yeah, I guess just one last piece of advice I would give to anyone is like anyone who's living abroad or studying abroad or in general, just abroad, um, probably I would tell them to like be comfortable living in uncertainty because I feel like that was something I had a lot of trouble with.
Hmm.
But what's I feel like as an American where we really like to conquer uncertainty or like find solutions to problems, usually with like a linear cause and effect kind of mindset.
Hmm.
But that doesn't really work when like you're learning something new every single day. And like, yeah, you're like an observer sometimes.
Hmm.
So like, but if you're comfortable living in uncertainty instead of trying to conquer the uncertainty, you're gonna be more comfortable like asking others for help or just more comfortable with not knowing everything.
Yeah. Wow, that's a mic drop moment. Great advice.
Thanks, Kara.
We're gonna leave it there. So, because I think that's a perfect way to close it out. I want to thank you, Hari, for sharing your journey and showing us what maybe taking a gap year or academic year abroad can look like beyond Instagram or maybe the clean, polished versions that the universities may hand out in their brochures. But I encourage anyone, if today's conversation inspired you to rethink your own timeline or consider more immersive forms of travel, you're really on the right path to getting into a next level of travel. And you should definitely check out Culture Travel because that's who we're looking to build for. And if you enjoyed it, please share it with someone who's questioning the straight path for university study, like Hari's story definitely took the path less traveled by for this. So I'm
Yeah.
feeling inspired. I'm not even in university anymore. So be sure to tune in to our next week episode with Hari. He will join us at a later date to talk more about Boren for anyone who is curious about that. And remember that some of the most important learning happens when you put the guidebook down. Thank you so much, everyone. See you.